Good morning and welcome to Vision in Action Live. We have a presentation on the way things work today and a discussion with Dr. Libby McGugan, MD. She works in emergency medicine until she switched her career to executive coaching. She's a TEDx speaker and she's author of The Power of the Lemon. Welcome, Dr. McGugan. I'm Jim Boswell. I'm your host and the author of Lifelong Fulfillment, Take Charge of Your Life. Today's presentation is going to be part 2 of how things work, and we're going to focus on economics, education, employment, and incomes based on U.S. statistics. So starting out, as we all know, it's great to live in an abundant environment. But even given that, individuals still need competency in a lot of different disciplines so that it feeds and supports their chosen endeavors. So this could include things like finance, accounting, science, math, psychology, and so forth. And these areas may not be very high on your personal priority list, but I want you to consider the fact that some competency in these areas contribute to the success of your priority. It's important also because of unintended and intended impacts in these areas. Number one, unintended, it's about reducing the risk of things you don't know about and their impact on what you are trying to accomplish. In terms of intended impact, it gives you greater competencies in other disciplines that actually supports your objective in your chosen endeavors. So as a consequence, a wise person really makes the effort to know at least some basics in these areas. So we're going to look at some of the ways that things actually work, and this will be part 2 of that whole presentation. So in summary, we're going to look at U.S. economics as a starting point. This is statistics from 2010, when the U.S. population was about 309 million people. As of the census here, you see on the left-hand part of the column, there's over 80 million families represented in this survey, and all of them reporting incomes from $0 to $200,000 per year. And so we want to focus on this to give you an idea about how this economy works. So if you look on the left side of the graph, you'll see that the vast majority of the population is really from the center point of the graph and going to the left. The minor part of the population is the center point going to the right. If you look at dollars in terms of the left-hand column is in terms of dollars per month. If you look in the far right, you'll see that spike at the end. Well, it turns out 80% of the money paid to employees is over on the far right-hand side in the 200,000 category. So our economics is very skewed. It's not a normal curve with a spike in the middle and tailing off to the right and to the left. It's actually, from a population perspective, it's shifted to the left. From a revenue perspective, it's all shifted to the right. So with that in mind, we'll have some interesting conversations as we move forward. So let's look at employment and incomes. This is Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is 10 years later, when all occupations were represented by 139,000 workers, 139 million, workers. Within that, they give you a mean hourly wage of about $27 and an annual mean wage of $56,000. This pretty much jives with other statistics you may come in contact with. So let's look at the outliers. At the lower end of the economic spectrum would be things like cooks and fast food operations, where it only employs, out of that 135 million, only about 500,000. Their wages are much less, say about $11 to $12, and their annual mean wage is about $24,000. Let's look at the far right. Let's take an anesthesiologist of which they're only about 29,000 at this point. They make $130 an hour. Their annual is $271,000. So you can see that, you know, all occupations, there's a wide range of opportunities in terms of what you choose as your focus to do, whether you're motivated by, high achievement and high income, or whether you have interests that are a little more in the mainstream, shall we say. So let's dig into this a little further. So let's say you want to know where all the top incomes are. Now, we can look in the median too, so I'm just giving you representative facts to consider. The top 20 in top incomes has a lot to do with medicine and everything associated with healthcare. Only until you get to number 11 do you start seeing business executives, the aerospace industry, and computer and information systems finally taking hold. So these are ones you might want to consider as goals if they match up with your own personal goals and your own personal character. So these are the top incomes. Let's look at the top growth industries to flesh this out. So if you look at these, the first 10, again, you have healthcare represented, but you have odd things like forestry. I never knew that. And software publishers, which makes a lot of sense if you think about it. In numbers 11 through 20, you see a lot of other businesses that are fast growth. Consulting services, data processing, administration, warehousing, professional and scientific and technical services, and guess what? Education, elementary and secondary schools, and junior colleges through professional schools. So let's move to the next slide and talk about how this all fits together. We can see that economics favors peak wage earners. We aren't counting those with inherited wealth here. We are looking at people where the requirements are to be highly educated, to be pretty well connected and pretty well networked. And also these careers are often defined by scarcity, education, and technical prowess. Now, let's just say you want something more mainstream. You're not inclined to just go after the money, so to speak. And it's more important then for you to actually have to be able to plan your work, your income, to mitigate risks and so forth. So it requires good planning, good knowledge, and good management. In fact, we address this with an example of someone electing to be a plumber or an electrician, and it's all in the book, Lifelong Fulfillment. So one of the strategies you might think about is if you took Myers-Briggs and then you extended it into what are likely careers for my personality type, and then you go look at the growth sectors, well, it would be nice if your particular bent was in these growth sectors if you want to grow with a business. And why would you do that? Well, you're going to have more individual opportunity, more potential for career growth and income. And with income, you can invest better in better outcomes for yourself based on your lifelong fulfillment plan. Now, if you look and add in the highest paying occupations, you now have a view of what of those career choices might be. So if you look at the intersection of these three things, it tells you kind of where you could create some leverage in terms of fastest growth, highest paying, and does it match my personality and my goals. So let's look at also another way on the downside to control your success, and that's in focusing on costs of living. We all deal with this, and it is something we have to have in our personal plans. If you look at this table, this is from about 2020, where one person's total expenses with rent was, just shy of $2,000 a month, and that was 100% of it. If you look down about 3 levels there, rent and utilities took up an extraordinary amount of that, 62% for just an individual. Go over to the right where we look at family of four, where they spend $4,400 a month, and then look at the amount for rent and utilities. It's only 45% of the total. So that tells you something. Being single is kind of an expensive proposition when it comes to housing, not so much with food, transportation, and other expenses that exclude rent. It also shows you that a family of four is a fairly economic thing you can do. It doesn't multiply by 2,000 per year for every member of the family. One thing to mention here, because we're going to look at it on another slide, is that the US is 2 times more expensive than the world average for individual economics. And the US cost of living is the 10th highest out of 197 worldwide nations where we have reliable statistics. So if you're in the US, you're looking at a much higher cost of living. So cost of living can be managed by where you live, by your family choices, and how you manage the expenses of housing, food, and transportation. However, just to raise an aside, just continue to remember that inflation is generic to all these expenses. Let's take a look at the location thing in particular. In the US, this is circa 2020 done by Mr. Roberts, looking at the lowest cost of living in the United States. And on the left-hand side, you see some of the most expensive cities and towns to live in. So Santa Ana, California, moving up to Irvine. Within there's Boston and Seattle and so on. If you look at the lowest, if you can find a way that you might like Wichita, Kansas as a place to live and work, well, it's very much one of the cheapest. And that column also includes places like Memphis, Tennessee, El Paso, Texas, Tucson, and Oklahoma City. So considering where you want to live, or if you can live abroad, it might be even cheaper than what we're actually seeing here. So that's just a reference point for your thinking moving forward. So summing this up, there's still going to always be lots to learn throughout your life. So continuous education is pretty much an important mandate for every individual. Your education and career choices determine your income and the outcomes of your efforts. So we're trying to provide some background information for you to use and to explore relative to what you decide to do. And again, the expenses, these are choices you have and disciplines that you can exercise to keep those in proper proportion. So prosperity is kind of a balanced condition between your income and your expenses. And it will change over time as you grow in knowledge and capability, and especially knowing how these things work and what resources are available to you for you to explore on your own personal initiative. So more and more of this is also available on lifelongfulfillment.com, and you're welcome to use those resources at your leisure. So now's the time in our meeting when we entertain perspectives of people living self-directed lives and point solution experts. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Libby McGugan, MD. After a career in emergency medicine, she is now an executive coach focused on inner success. And she's a TEDx speaker and also the author of The Power of the Lemon. So she has some important information to share with us today. Dr. McGugan, welcome to Vision in Action Live. We're happy to have you here.
Oh, thank you, Jim. It's a pleasure. Pleasure to meet you.
Great, great. So maybe, that was a fairly brief introduction. Maybe you would like to acquaint us with a few more facts about you, your work, and your focus that I might not have touched on.
Okay, sure. Well, where to start? Yes, I am a coach, and I tend to work with business leaders, executives who are looking in a new direction. And I came to this really after a very unexpected change in my life. I had career in medicine, which I loved. I was in emergency medicine. I think you call it an attending consultant over here. But I was in medicine for 20 years. But along the way, I kept meeting people who were improving against the odds with conditions that medicine couldn't cure. So I got really interested in what it was that they were doing. And eventually, the job was so busy, I didn't have the headspace really to investigate. So I left my job to find out more. And I learned from these amazing people who were recovering from extraordinary health challenges, learned from what their approach was and how they were dealing with their challenges. And that really opened me up to the power of the mind and the power of our focus. And from that place, I guess it took me into learning from athletes, elite athletes who knew how to be in the zone for their performances. It took me into psychology, philosophy, physics, and really into learning from people who had found a new way of being that was very much in harmony with themselves and with life. So I guess you could call this really connecting with your true nature.
Okay.
And that's really what I focus on with people, to help them connect with who they really are before all of their thinking. And it's incredibly powerful. So yeah.
Okay. So maybe you can tell us, kind of at a high altitude view about what you think the secrets to the fulfilling life entail.
Yeah, I think finding who you really are, who you truly are before all of this assumptions that you have about yourself. So by that I mean connecting with the part of you that is innately peaceful, innately creative, and where you'll find your source of replenishment, innate well-being, and you'll find all of that. It's not in your thinking; it's actually kind of before psychology. So it's directing people, it's getting people to really understand where their experience comes from and their relationship with thought, how that shapes their experience, and getting them past that really to have the experience of feeling that they are themselves. So it's an inner sense of peace and being naturally who you really are and being free to express that.
I see.
I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it takes away it helps people get past the limiting assumptions that hold us back and that keep us stuck, and um that don't allow us to grow and express ourselves in the way that is right and natural for us. As I see it, everybody here is here for a reason. We all have something to contribute. So when you really allow yourself to find who you are and what it is that you have to offer, then it's like living your blueprint. You'll find immense fulfillment in that. Yeah.
Okay. I think you have some ideas about how to create a vision or become kind of visionary in your approach. Maybe you could share with us how that works.
Yeah, I think it really helps to get a clear idea of the version of yourself you would like to be. And it can help to visualize, it can help to, imagine yourself in certain situations, maybe with a particular occupation or in a particular relationship or whatever comes to mind. But more important than that, I would say, is connecting with the feeling of being that version of yourself. Because when you get to that level of experiencing the feeling, you're really connecting with the energy of who you are as that version of yourself. And that's very powerful. And it's almost like setting the coordinates for where you're going to go. It gives you a direction of travel that's actually very powerful. So I would say to people that if you're envisioning your future in a way that you would prefer, find the feeling of it and try to embody that, to move around in that, and allow yourself to acclimatize to becoming that version of yourself, because it already exists.
Right. So if I came to you for help about getting that vision, I normally would come there with a lot of life history. I have my own thoughts. I may have a gut that drives what I do as opposed to, the more factual approach to things. How do you make that transition? Because it sounds like it might be kind of hard.
Yeah, and it does take practice because what tends to trip us up is exactly what you said. You come with your own thoughts, you come with your own assumptions about who you are and what you can and can't do. So I would say we would start with getting a very clear relationship with thought and a clear understanding of what thought is
Hmm.
and how to work with it in the best way so that you can begin to shape yourself and your life in a direction you prefer. So it's like, you're the artist and thought is your paint and the world your canvas. You can shape things in a way when you begin to hone your focus in a direction you prefer. But that also involves noticing and releasing and letting go of those assumptions that are holding you back. And that does take practice. No
Hmm.
question. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. There's another concept I think that you articulate called true connections. Maybe you could review that for us.
Yeah. True connection, really, as I see it, is connecting from your true nature. So it's when you drop into that space of um, natural peace and uh, openness, availability, you're connecting with other people from a place that's not inside your head. So you're not strategizing, you're not thinking about what they're saying, you're not thinking about what you're going to say in return. It's actually, um, it's almost like dropping into your heart,
Hmm.
where you can feel a connection with them, and it's noticing the similarities. We're both human, we're both um, we both have a life force within us that's the same thing. We may be different in our expressions, but ultimately we're connecting with a different version of ourselves as we meet people. And seeing people on that level takes away the differences and um, the suspicion and the competition and all that stuff. It doesn't tend to help. So yeah.
Right. Right. Okay. Um, in doing this kind of mental change, you're working with business executives, and I'm being an ex-business executive, I sort of understand that. We're a tough bunch to coach, in my
Yes.
opinion.
Yes, sometimes. Although I don't know, I feel maybe it's just the people I'm meeting. I think that's changing. I think you're absolutely right. And I think that comes from a long time of developing a very strong intellect and a very well developed mental structure, which we need for the strategizing and the goal setting of business. We need all that, absolutely. But what this work does is it points you to what's beyond that, to what's outside of that. So you could say it's like helping people shift from living in a bubble of knowledge and a huge amount of knowledge they've accumulated over their
Mhm.
years of experience into wisdom. And it's wisdom is like the next level out, which, as you put it, I love how you describe listening to your gut instinct in your book. It's talking about that, is that there's another level to us that has access to more information that's really valuable and really helpful in practical ways, particularly for decision making. So it's getting people to connect to that level of themselves um, is helpful in business. It's also, I think, it's going to help reshape the direction of travel for business and move it out from being concerned only with the bottom line
Mhm.
into what actually matters are the people here and how they feel and how we can support them and the connections, authentic connections within a company and with our clients and in with society in general. So it's a much more connected, compassionate, collaborative approach than perhaps the traditional business model.
Right. Right. Well, to expand on that a little bit, I think all of us grow up and get to, say, our early 20s, and we carry a lot of opinions around and indoctrination we've gone through and directions our parents have thrown us into. And I personally found that I had strong gut feelings about things, but I didn't trust it. And there's a guy named Dr. Kahneman who does behavioral psychology that points out that he thinks our brains, there's part of our brain that is really about survival, and it's called the system one brain, and it's very emotional, it's very instantaneous, and that's kind of that gut, if you will. And that the system two brain is much slower, it's a little bit lazier, so it's kind of hard to get it enacted, but it's the one that deals with facts and proof and logic and brings you to maybe a higher level of performance. Um, does that jive with anything you're thinking?
It does, but that's really interesting because I'd almost put them the other way around. As I see it, I would. I'd
Okay.
love, I'd love to meet and have a chat. But the way I would see it is that we've actually done really well to develop the part of our brain which deals with the facts, and we've become a little bit wedded to that, and we tend to assume that facts are truths when in fact often they're assumptions. We have to
Mm-hmm.
keep challenging that one.
Right.
But more importantly, I would say that the gut feel, the gut instinct is actually something we've not given enough attention to. And if you listen to that, it's a subtler signal. It's a subtler part of us to listen to. But once you tune to it, it to me, it never lets you down. It's always been the facts might say something,
Yes.
but my gut says no, do this instead. And if I trust my gut, it works.
Okay.
So to me, I would just see that a little bit differently in the sense that I'm relating the gut instinct to the bigger part of us that is, you could say, your wisdom that has access to more information than our personal minds do, if
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, there's also a thought process about the continuum of happiness moving through to fulfillment, moving through to wisdom.
Mm.
And is there part of that continuum that you focus on, or is it everything in there?
It's all of it, and it's recognizing um, that it's normal for us to fluctuate. It's like our
Mhm.
minds have a cycle, like everything within the human body, our minds also have a cycle within them. There are times when we feel we're on our game and very clear, and there are times when we feel we're in the fog. But left to themselves, our minds clear themselves and we come back to clarity. So, yes, so I think understanding that whilst we are always evolving, and the more we look inwards and we connect with this deeper part of ourselves, the more we are going to reach those states of contentment and happiness and fulfillment and wisdom. But the direct path, as I've discovered it myself, and I've learned from lots of different people to find this and practiced it, is actually when you drop thinking. It's when you drop all regular thoughts, because we've
Mhm.
got a lot of them. And when your mind actually settles down, it's like the direct path to wisdom, because immediately you're open, you're available, you have access to higher quality thinking that drops
Mhm.
in, higher quality solutions, more creative ideas. So it's, to me, yes, we fluctuate because that's the nature of our minds day to day, but the trajectory is upwards, and the direct path in any moment to access peace, contentment, happiness, wisdom is to drop our thinking, even if it's just for a moment,
Okay.
and open up. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Um, One of the things I think you articulate is the idea of why simply trying things may not work.
Yeah.
That sounds a little revolutionary. So please explain.
Yes. It's really, I'm sure you've had this experience where you're trying to figure something out, you're trying to make something work, and it's just not happening. So when when what we're conditioned to do and what we've been taught to do, I think, through a lot of our education systems, is to think analytically about most problems in life. So if we're trying to fix a problem and we don't have the answer relatively quickly, we tend to think harder to get the answer. Yeah. But what that does is it tends to frustrate you. So how you feel begins to dip because you're not finding the answer. And when you feel worse, your state of being shifts. So you end up, it changes your physiology. You actually shut down within yourself. If you get more stressed about not finding the answer, what happens is your sympathetic nervous system kicks in, the blood supply to your prefrontal cortex drops, so your decision-making center is not as online as it should be. Your heart rate goes up, all these things. You can feel quite stressed quite quickly if you're trying to find the answer or fix something and you can't do it. So what I'm suggesting is that the answer is actually the opposite. It is to let go and to put it down. And we know this because often the answers drop in if you're driving or if you're in the shower or doing the dishes and you're not trying to figure something out. It's when you open up you relax your mind and allow more space in there. You've got space for the answer to land. You won't hear it. You're not hearing it if you're focused on one line of thought, which is essentially, I can't fix this. I can't figure this out. So if you're focused on that, you're not going to see it. You're not going to see the answer, which is right there.
So it sounds like putting too much effort into trying is actually counterproductive.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it's not that we sit back and don't do anything. Of course, you have to act, but I guess what I'm pointing to is that there's a place that we act from that is most efficient. And that is when we feel like we're clear-minded, that we feel that we're we are more open. When we feel tense or frustrated and we keep trying from that space, we're less likely to get the answers. We're just going to feel worse.
I see.
So, yeah.
So in the realm of, self-help and so forth, what do you see as higher quality solutions that people might want to focus on?
For them, for their own lives or?
Well, in your practice, what do you see as high quality solutions that you find really effective?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. It's the work that I do with people points people to their own wisdom. It points people to that space within them where they find the answers for themselves. So I don't offer what the solution will be, they discover that themselves. But what they will find is that the quality of their solutions or the quality of their thinking goes up when they practice connecting with this space and they let go of their thinking and allow a better perspective, a better solution to drop in. And the difference is in just what we're speaking about before. If you're trying hard to figure something out, there's an effort and there's a bit of frustration in that. Whereas when you're open and available and the answer occurs to you, there's more of an effortlessness to that. So it helps people really kind of live more in a flow state where it's just solutions land for them more effortlessly. And that is hugely satisfying. It's a very fulfilling experience to suddenly have the light bulb go on. Yeah.
Sounds interesting. Must be fun coaching somebody to get them to do that if they don't have those skills already or think that way.
Yeah, it is. And you'd be amazed at people who I have to watch my thinking because I can't let my assumptions of, well, why would IT specialists or engineers be interested in this because they're very logical and very analytical. But it's amazing, everybody is human and everybody knows the experience of feeling at peace with themselves, and they know the experience of feeling connected. And most people are looking for that, actually, at the end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds like you're good at removing roadblocks so the mind can do what it's designed to do anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, all I do is I point people to the door and they they walk through it. That's it. But it's a lot of fun. It's very, I have to say, I'm so fulfilled with this work because you can see people change physically from having a level of tension within them or stress from focusing on certain addictive thinking patterns to when that begins to dissolve and they look younger, they've got more energy. One lovely client I worked with once said, I don't know what to do with all my spare time now that I'm not worried about everything. So it's, things like that actually are very satisfying to see people enjoy being themselves and relax into that,
Right.
and express themselves fully. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we're kind of coming to the end of our time. I wanted to ask if you had any final comments for our audience, or any comments on lifelong fulfillment that you can share with us.
Yeah, I mean, I love the first two main points that you point to in your book. Believe in your innate identity. I love that because that's what I'm speaking about. It's getting people back to their innate, their true nature, who they really are before all the layers of assumption pile on. And to me, that's where you find fulfillment. And also listening to your gut is, just to begin to notice that a bit more and to trust it a little bit more, just with, start with small things. But I think those are two very powerful pieces of advice for your readers, and I would wholeheartedly agree with them. Absolutely.
Okay. So if people want to reach out to you, how would they get in touch with you?
Sure. Well, I'm on LinkedIn. Dr. Libby is my Dr. Libby McGugan. I think it's my full name on there, and also my website is just my name. It's libbymcgugan.me. So it's on the web, and there's also access to a paper that I've written recently on inner success, so a framework for inner success for business leaders, which kind of collates a lot of evidence that has recently appeared around the importance of well-being at work and how that improves your performance.
Right.
Yeah.
And The Power of the Lemon, is that on Amazon, or how would people reach it?
Yes, it's on Amazon. I've got a little copy here. It looks like this. It's The Power of the Lemon. It's on Amazon. It's a very short book. It's just dip in and out, and it's little insights that I've gathered over the years. And I have another chapter in the book coming out at the end of June called Awakened Leaders. So that's more focused on the leadership aspect. But that again will be on LinkedIn and available on Amazon. So.
Great. Well, I want to thank you, Dr. McGugan, for joining us this morning, and thank you for your insights.
Thank you. It's been lovely meeting you. And thank you for yours, Jim, too.
Best of luck on the practice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.